Thomas felt his heart beat faster as he thought about what he wanted to do. Taking a walk with Jessie in the evening had become his little ritual, but this time it would be different. He decided it was time to be honest with her, to confess his feelings. It was hard because he was afraid of rejection or that it might ruin their friendship, but he felt that this time he needed to be open. Thomas texted Jessie, asking her out for a walk. She replied quickly, agreeing to meet near the park. Thomas's heart raced, and he began to prepare. He had gone over in his head what he would say many times, but he knew that he couldn't prepare all the words in advance. It had to come from the heart. When he arrived at the meeting place, Jessie was already waiting, smiling at him, her hair lightened by the last rays of the setting sun. She looked light and natural, and Thomas felt his fear subside a little. They greeted each other and immediately started walking through the park. The weather was nice and the park looked beautiful in the evening light. It was the perfect place to talk. Their footsteps synchronized and the air became even more pleasant as they slowly walked together. Thomas felt his heart breaking at the thought of having to share his feelings, but at the same time he felt an overwhelming desire to do so. They walked on, and Thomas decided he wasn't going to wait any longer. This was the moment when he didn't want to hide from his emotions anymore. Jessie, I want to talk about something important, he began, struggling to find the words, but feeling like they wouldn't sound the way he wanted them to. You know, I started running with you just to forget about everything that happened. But the more I see you, the more I realize that this is more than just a run. Jessie paused for a moment, her gaze becoming more attentive. She listened to him, and Thomas sensed how important this moment really was for both of them. What do you mean? She asked, not interrupting, but her tone was curious, interested. Thomas took a deep breath and felt his heart tighten, but he could no longer remain silent. I can't hide it anymore. I feel like I enjoy spending time with you. And I don't just mean sports. I mean you, your support, your smile. You've made my days easier, and I feel like it's not just friendship. I want to be with you as more than a friend. Jessie stopped and turned to him. Her face expressed surprise, but at the same time there was a slight smile that Thomas noticed immediately. He was worried, and his heart was beating so fast that he was afraid she would hear him, or understand. Thomas. Jessie began, and Thomas felt himself trembling. I thought you felt that, but I wasn't sure. I've been thinking a lot about you and me, too, and I think the feeling is mutual. The words melted all his tension. He couldn't believe she'd said that. Jessie patted his shoulder, and he felt hope rising in him. Then maybe we could spend more time together? Not just for practice, but to get to know each other better, Thomas said, already feeling his breathing ease. They stood there, in the shade of the trees, but the whole world seemed brighter to him. Jessie simply smiled and nodded. I'd love to, Thomas. That sounds great. Thomas and Jessie continued their walk, moving through the park, where the trees covered the ground with their leaves and the evening sun had a warm and pleasant light. The weather was perfect for just walking, taking it easy, enjoying the moment and spending time together. They took their time, and every step seemed so natural. Jessie, as always, was energetic and open. Her conversations were light and unobtrusive, she laughed and often made comments about the environment, the park, how beautiful every detail looked when you paid attention. She could always find something to make him smile. Thomas felt his heart gradually calm down. He didn't say much, but just her presence made everything seem brighter. You know, I've never looked at the park like that before, Thomas said, looking at the long shadows of the trees, which suddenly didn't seem as familiar as they always did. I was always in a hurry, like I was running after something, and I didn't notice all these little things. But now that we're training together, I've started to pay attention to these moments. Jessie smiled and turned to him. Her eyes were shining in the light that was left from the sunset. It's great that you're paying attention to this. Sometimes we really forget the simplest but most important things around us. I've always thought it's important to find a moment for yourself, even in the smallest things. Thomas turned, following her gaze. His heart beat more slowly. Now he really felt that this walk was more than just time spent together. It was like a song they were making together, each step adding a new chord. I'm glad you suggested we go for a walk. It really helps me understand a lot, he said, a little embarrassed but feeling how important it was to share his thoughts with her. I'm glad we started talking more, too, Jessie replied, her voice calm but warm. You know, I always felt like you had a lot to strive for. And now that you've started to open up, I can see how much it's changing you. Thomas began to realize that her words really mattered. She wasn't just saying them, she was genuinely interested in him finding himself. They walked through the park, and with each step Thomas felt more relaxed. Night was approaching, and the park became quiet, only other walkers appeared from time to time. They talked about various topics, but the conversation was never difficult. They talked about life, about different moments from the past, laughed about some stories. Thomas realized that with Jessie he didn't have to pretend to be someone else, he was himself, and that was a rare thing. Thomas, I'm glad we met. These walks became more than just exercise for me, Jessie said, pausing for a moment and looking at him. Her eyes reflected the moonlight, and her gaze was warm. You're an incredible person, and I'm so glad you're a part of my days. Thomas was struck by her words. They sounded so simple, yet so profound. He felt her support and understanding help him not only in sports, but in life as well. Thomas and Jessie continued their evening walk through the park. Each step was new to them, as a bond grew between them that was deeper than any friendship that could have been forged through training together. The evening air was cool, but warm from the smiles and the soft light that fell from the lanterns to the ground, flooding the park with a golden glow. They walked side by side, taking their time, feeling more and more with each step that there was something special about this moment. Thomas would look at Jessie as she talked about various little things, and he would notice how she glowed in the light. She looked even more beautiful than usual. Her voice was calm and gentle, and her eyes were lively, bright, and captivating. Thomas could feel his heart beating faster when she laughed or paid attention to him. He couldn't help but think that there was more between them than just training, more than just a second acquaintance. They passed another streetlight, and suddenly he stopped. Jessie, without noticing at first, stopped next to him, her eyes focused on the streetlight, and then she turned her gaze to him. What happened? She asked, her voice calm, but Thomas could see the interest in her eyes. Thomas fell silent for a moment, his heart beating faster, and he felt a surge of excitement wash over him. He knew the moment had come when he needed to be honest with her. All these weeks, when they had run together, when they had just spent time together, he had felt more and more that this was not just friendship, that he was developing more feelings for her. And now, as they stood together, with the flashlights illuminating her face, with everything so still, he couldn't hide it anymore. He took a slow step toward her, his gaze never leaving her eyes. Jessie, he said, his voice a little nervous, but also stubborn. You know, I started this all as a workout, as a way to forget. But the more time we spent together, the more I realized it wasn't just a workout. You're not just a workout partner to me. You've become something more. Jessie stood quietly, listening to his words. She noticed how his expression changed, how he became more serious and open. Her eyes shone in the darkness. She took a small step forward, but she didn't break the silence. Thomas took a deep breath and continued, and I can't hide it anymore. I feel this way when I'm with you. I want to be more than a friend. I want to be with you more. The silence between them had grown so deep that it seemed almost tangible. Thomas didn't know what to expect from Jessie. He saw her looking at him, her gaze attentive, a little surprised, but warm at the same time. He realized that there was no turning back. And then Jessie, as if understanding his excitement, smiled slightly, and her face blossomed. She replied quietly, but with an equally warm look, I thought you felt that way. I can't hide my feelings anymore either. Her words dispelled all his doubts. Thomas felt as if for the first time he had felt the importance of being open and honest with someone. Jessie took a step closer, and he didn't wait any longer. She didn't back down. She also had the same desire as he did. And then, in the light of the lantern, he moved closer to her and kissed her gently. It was a light kiss, full of tenderness, and he could feel her arms wrapping around him. It was the first real confession, the first real intimacy between them, and it felt so natural that he didn't want the moment to end. Jessie smiled as they pulled away from each other. I'm glad you took this step, she said, her voice sounding like it had never been before. I feel the same way. Thomas felt his heart fill with lightness. All the worries, all the uncertainty had disappeared. This was their moment, and he was ready for it. He realized that this was just the beginning of a new story, a story where they had been through everything together, supported each other, and created their future together.